on my computer. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I'm so glad we're getting to do this.
I'm very excited.
I've loved all of our conversations so far. So now we're like memorializing
Yay.
our combos. I can introduce myself first. Kirsten Ziegler, HR consultant and founder of KDZ HR Consulting. I primarily focus on small businesses and startups, providing them support to empower them to grow their teams, lead their teams, and just be better bosses in general. How about you?
I love that. So I'm Edie Penn. I'm the principal and founder of Penn Square Consulting, which is also HR consulting. And I do kind of everything under the HR umbrella. But the thing that I love to do the most is to coach and train and support emerging people leaders. So
Love that.
that's enough fun.
I love that. I think that's something we can definitely both relate to, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And
There's a
so
lot of need out there.
definitely. And I think that like a lot of people leaders just they don't know what they don't know, you know, like what a general phrase, but it's true. And I think one of the things that you and I were talking about was employee engagement surveys.
My favorite topic, and also not favorite topic.
Right. Well, I loved that. Do you want to start? Because I know like you were the one that was kind of like, let's talk about this.
So I think, a big part of why I've spent so much time thinking about employee engagement surveys is because, first of all, I mostly work with nonprofit organizations, and just kind of as a matter of course, in a nonprofit organization, we want to, understand how our employees are doing and what's the best way to do that. And my experience, anyway, is that nonprofits are very big fans of surveys. So employee engagement survey was kind of an obvious way to go. But also because of that, there are all of these third party providers of employee engagement surveys. And for a long time, as a practitioner, as somebody in-house in the organization, would look at these and feel like I wasn't really getting everything I needed to get from that survey. So like a common or a popular question on there is like, do you have everything you need to do your job well? And then a 5-point scale, and strongly agree or strongly disagree. Well, if 30% of the staff says, I, slightly disagree, or whatever that like number 2 is, that I don't have all the things to do my job well, as an HR practitioner, and then as somebody who's thinking about the future of the organization, what does that mean to me? And like, how is that actually actionable? How do I make that actionable? And so one of the first things I started to do was to do another survey, right? And so the next survey would be like, tell me the things that you need to do your job, or tell me the ways you have all the tools you need to do your job, or tell me all the ways you don't have because now I have nuanced community information, right? Which we'll definitely get more into, information about what our employees need to do their jobs well. And now I can make that actionable. Now I can go to leadership and say, here's what we've been doing, and here's what's working. Here's what we've been doing, and here's what's not working. And here's what we need to do because we haven't tried this before. And without that, like, second iteration of questioning, I know how we're doing compared to the nonprofit down the street, but do I care about that? Is that important to me? Is that important to my target population? Is that important to my staff? I think it's slightly so.
That's so interesting because like basically, and what I always think about these surveys is that they mean nothing if you don't have a follow-up of some sort. And so you're proving that point right there. When it comes to like generic questions, you have to follow up to get more detail. If you have people flagging certain things, you have to follow up to say, we heard you. You can't just have these things go into the ether because then employees get disgruntled. So these like generic surveys, when they're filling out, I don't have everything I need to do my job. And then you don't send out a follow-up survey and you don't have the information you need to take any action. Nothing happens. And then employees get disgruntled. And they're like, why should I share?
The next time you do that survey, it's going to be meaningless.
Absolutely.
You told me you were going to listen. I
Yep,
gave you my opinion and nothing happened. And now you're asking me to give
absolutely.
you my opinion again. Well, the last time I did that, you didn't anything. I have no reason to believe you're going to do something now. And now I'm going to lie, or I'm just going
Uh-huh.
to like do all neutrals or whatever. I'm just going to play it safe because this is a perfunctory thing. Like, we're not actually doing this to make a difference. And like, I am a big proponent of doing things inside of an organization that are going to make positive change, but I absolutely will not do something that I think is going to be damaging to your staff. Right? You only
Absolutely.
want me to do this one survey, we're going to have a problem. Because now I'm gonna,
Exactly.
right, like, here are all the things that could happen by just doing this one survey. Are you sure that's what you still want to do? Right?
Hmm.
Because that's not us taking care of your staff at all.
No, not at all. I actually had an experience during the pandemic where, everybody went remote, obviously, right?
Right.
Like we weren't essential by any means. All desk workers and everybody, picked up their laptops, went home and, we were remote for I think like, a year and a half
Mhm,
until the conversation of back to office started returning. And
mhm.
so the president of the company at the time said, let's send out a survey. And it's like, okay, do you want to know how many days people want to come back to the office? Because, you could be getting yourself into some dangerous territory. They wanted to know. They want to hear it from the people. They want it to be, a collaborative policy. So, everybody gave their opinion, and the company said, no, 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 that's too many days to be remote. We want you in office more days, and did not listen to the results of the survey. People were leaving left and right,
Of
mass
course.
exodus.
Of course. I think that one of the things that that story makes me think about is far too often we do these things without thinking about the communications around the thing,
Oh, yeah.
right? So, as a leadership team, if there is a frame, if there is a threshold, if there is something we are unwilling to do, we need to communicate that before we ask you what you want.
Yes.
Because if you want that very thing that we're unwilling to do, we've created damage. Like,
Of
we've created
course.
that situation that we're trying to avoid. So be clear, be transparent about the thing that you will not do, and then ask the question. Because at least people are like, you know what? They told us what they really don't want. Inside of that framework, where's the freedom? What are my
Right.
choices that are left?
Right. And people want to be involved in decision-making processes that affect their lives. So, if you're saying, I think I want people in the office 3 to 4 days a week, then give them the option to pick which one. Right? Don't leave it open-ended.
Right. How many days would you like to be here? Zero.
None.
Zero is
I
the
mean, let's
answer.
be clear, it's none. The answer is none. I think that was my answer at the time.
Right.
I don't need
Right.
to. I'm good here. But
Right.
people were really, really pissed off, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I was disappointed in
Yeah.
the way that that was handled.
I
So,
think too that, like, in addition to kind of like giving the frame for like it's going to be 3 or 4 days, right? Maybe
mhm.
that's an opportunity to say, like, give us some other ideas about how we could make it 2 or 3 days, right? So that you're not only soliciting information about the thing that you want, leadership or organization, but you're also giving your staff an opportunity to feel some ownership in that
Yeah.
decision by providing additional options. Right?
Mhm.
You want people who are going to stay in your organization, give them ownership, or oftentimes I call it authorship over your policies, practices, and procedures. And they're going to feel like, not only are they going to feel like you heard me and like I built this too, they self-reinforce, they self-regulate, right? So
Mhm.
they're regulating other people. You don't have to worry about it. It's just,
Absolutely.
there are
And then
so
they
many easy ways to make this happen, make it go well, and people are just not doing it.
Well, it also creates more like ownership of their jobs then, of the more pride in the company and more, ownership in the company. And then you have, you know, increased retention and, it moves.
It
Everything's
means
connected.
everything. Increased retention means I'm also gonna, my friend who's looking for a job, I'm
Yep.
like, you know what? We're hiring in the social media department or something, someplace they don't even work. And
Yeah.
like, come work with us. I love my job. So
Yeah.
you not only retain people, but now you're gaining talent by word of mouth. Like, come
Uh-huh. I know. And it's so easy. It's so easy. One of the things I want to bring up so I don't forget is the timing of employee engagement surveys. So
Good question.
my thought is always to separate them and like let me know if you've thought the same thing or even disagree. Separate them from the performance review process.
Goodness. 100%. Like, if
Okay.
we can put those in two different ends of the year, like
Yeah.
as far away we can put those two things, please.
Yes. So I always think if your performance review cycle is annual, right, and you're doing it like end of year into the beginning of the year, you want your employee engagement survey in the summer at
Right.
some time,
That's
right?
right.
Like
That's
before
right.
the performance review cycle starts to come up, like maybe June to August. You want to be
Right.
as far away because if somebody didn't get the raise they wanted, if somebody didn't, if they're disagreed with their manager on something, they're going to put that right into your employee engagement survey and you're going to have a completely biased result there.
It's true. One of these days, you and I are going to have a similar discussion about evaluations
Oh,
and
yes. Oh, so excited.
how often we should be doing them and how we should be doing them, all those kinds of good things too, which right, definitely plays
Yes.
into the question that you asked. But I think if you are an organization that's going to do evaluations annually, so only once a year, yes, please try to put your employee engagement survey at a very different point. I think I've seen organizations do it right before thinking that that was going to be helpful. And what they don't realize is that all of your employees know that the evaluation is going to immediately follow the employee
Mm-hmm.
engagement survey that you just sent out. So all the anxiety that they're already feeling about that, they're already feeling about
Mm-hmm.
that, and all that anxiety is going to show up. And then obviously you don't want to do it after because
Right.
there are going to be some very unhappy people with the way that the process went, or what their manager said to them, or those kinds of things. And it's going to also not bode very, as neutral as you can kind of get your staff. That's where you want them to be when they take that survey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. How about when it comes to so I just remember in a past company there being this huge fear. Employees were very afraid that it wasn't actually anonymous and
Yeah.
that they were saying, yeah, it says anonymous, but you can track the IP. I'm like, no one wants to spend time doing that, first of all. Like we but like it's a real fear. And to me, that's a concern also, when you have people so afraid to take ownership of their answers, that's a problem. Have
Yeah.
you had experiences
Well,
like that?
yes. And I almost wish there was somebody else here because my experience of this has been that employees will never, there's nothing you can do to satisfy employees' worry that the
Yeah.
survey is going to be anonymous, right? The best thing you can do as an organization is just be super transparent about who's going to see it, what that person is going to see, and who has access to what other kinds of things that are come out of that survey. Just be super
Mhm.
transparent about that. But the thing that I found impacts how much your employees care about anonymity is how much action you take.
Mhm.
Because if you take a lot of action on that survey, if you hear them and then do things to improve the terms and conditions of their employment, they don't care that it's whether or not it's anonymous. Like, I've had the situation where I've had to redact things in an employee engagement survey because people were so honest that I was like, I I can't reproduce this in any form because everybody's gonna know it was you. And they're like, I don't care. I want them to know it was me. They can come talk to me. I'm gonna sign it. My name's at the bottom here. Like,
They're like, I
right,
did that.
right. But which when it happened the first time, I was in such shock because I was like, wait, why would somebody be this honest about what is happening in their department? And that was the answer. We had just done a lot of work from the year following that they were like, oh, you're going to listen to us? Here's some more stuff you can do.
I
Here's some
mean,
more stuff you can do. And the
that's a
thing
great
is,
problem.
it's a great problem to have. And so, like, part of at some point they're like, I don't really care whether or not this is anonymous because I know it's handled. The
Mhm.
likelihood that, like, my manager's going to retaliate against me, or leadership, or HR, like, the likelihood that's going to happen is low because I've already seen what you've done with the information we've already provided, and now I trust you.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. I've unfortunately never been in a situation where that's happened. Now, I do think that, it is different when you have small businesses that are like under 10 employees, right? Like
Sure.
a lot of the times the trust is, clients I've worked with, the trust is there, right? I
Yeah.
won't use that general for everyone, but also if you are to do it anonymously, you can easily tell. Like there's like one person that does each job function. You could tell who it is. So
Right. That's
I
right.
think also it's easy to open up the lines of communication when you have a smaller team. But when you have a bigger team, it's like, how do you keep that trust as you grow,
Yeah.
basically?
I mean, I think all of this, both in the smaller organizations and in the larger organizations, the answer is the same. And it's really building connection, building
Yeah.
those relationships. And I think we get it in our heads that building relationships is harder to do the larger the organization is. But in my experience, not only is that not true, but the thing that impedes that kind of trust in a larger organization is very rarely the relationship between like me, employee, and my direct supervisor.
Hmm.
Generally, the issue is my relationship to leadership. Now that I'm farther away from leadership, like I don't see the executive director every day, or we don't talk, we don't have those one-on-ones like we used to. I feel like I don't have access to leaders in the same way that I had before. That is generally the thing that starts to erode the relationship. And the thing that can save that is by having a good relationship with your direct supervisor. Like
Yeah.
that is, for me, the strongest KPI to retention in the organization is how strong a manager is and how strong those relationships are that they have with the people that they directly supervise, because they can save your talent.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's so important to build up your management team and really, make sure that they actually want to be managers, want to lead people. Like
Yes,
it's not for everyone, which is
that's right.
totally fine.
That's
That's
right.
totally fine. But you just need to make sure the people that are in those seats want to do that and are
Want to do
invested in
that
it.
and understand what their responsibilities are as people in those seats.
Yeah.
Very often when I go into an organization, whether as a consultant or as a full-time employee, one of the first things, I try to assess is there people manager training? And I
Hmm.
often get pushback about this because from my perspective and certainly in my experience, if there's a lack of people manager training, your culture is suffering.
Yeah.
But if you're training your people managers and you are ensuring that they are consistent both in how they assess performance and how they allow people to go on vacation, and
Hmm.
and whether or not they're sending people emails at midnight and 5
Right.
a.m. and expecting, like if you have some idea of what that looks like across the organization and your people managers are being consistent, right? If the practice is bad, then you're gonna have like
Yeah.
a bad culture. But if you want to improve the practice, if you want to make sure that employees feel heard, valued, and understood, one of the quickest ways to get there is by making sure your people managers are properly trained in your way. One of the
Yes.
things I get a lot of pushback about is like, well, I've been people managing for 20 years. That's great. This
Yeah.
organization's been here too. You haven't
Right.
or you haven't been managing these people for 20 years. And there are things about this nuanced community that weren't true at the organization where you were for
Hmm.
20 years. And how do you now, especially if you're somebody who's been doing it for a long time, how do you now need to adjust? What skills do you need to develop? What things do you need to learn now, even
Hmm.
though you've had 20 years of people management, in order to make sure that these people that you're managing are getting what they need for this organization?
Absolutely. It's just like starting any job, right? Like you have to do that with any skill-based job. People management is one of those.
Yes.
And it may just be a part of your job, but you still have to do that. You still have to relearn it every time.
I know that you and I have fairly different industry backgrounds, so I'd be curious about kind of your experience with people managing, the kind of pushback that you get, because
Yeah.
I, I'm dealing so much with the same type of organizations that like when I get that pushback, I'm like, I know where this is going. I can finish the sentence, but I don't, I haven't done like retail or some of the healthcare or some of the other things that you've done.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that.
I think that so from my experience, the more it differs between the more corporate kind of
Sure.
companies and the like less like smaller business, scrappier kind of
Yes.
companies, like maybe more creative. The more corporate, I find that a lot of the people leaders still can't say they don't want to be a people leader or don't know how to. They just they're like, no, I'm so good at management, right? And it's a lot of like peeling back the unlearning and like
Yeah.
kind of pushing in some of the learning. It's really difficult. One of the corporate companies I worked for, they had leadership training, but it was really difficult to get people to attend every single one that they were assigned to. So that was just disappointing. I think that with some of the smaller businesses that I like maybe currently support or have worked for, in a full-time capacity, a lot of people get put into people leadership roles that don't want to be there. And that's fine that they don't want to, but it's like, because it's a small company, it's just the next natural step.
Right.
And so,
Let's like talk about why they really want to be there, right? They want to be there because they're going to get paid more.
right. But at the same time, if they've been doing the same job for a certain number of years, they should be ready for a promotion or, some sort of pay increase. But the only way to do that is to then
Manage
lead
people.
a team.
Yes.
And so, like, I've just had this whole, I mean, my last blog post was actually about this. And like, because I've been having these conversations, like, I'm 38 years old, I'm nearing, about to be 39 this year, almost 40. My peers right now are in a place where they have become people managers in some way, and most of them hate it. Most of them miss doing their tactical skill-based job because that's what they're good at. That's what their passion is. That's where their talent is. But in order to move up in their career and, make a life for themselves, they had to be put in these like manager or director roles where they're leading teams. And I just feel like that sucks. Like, I don't agree, and I don't claim to know the solution for this, right? One of my ideas was having, like, if your budget allows, at least having a dedicated people leader that works with these skill-based mentors, right? So you could still move those technical people up the ladder, but they're not responsible for, performance reviews or, the day-to-day employee management. They're just responsible for, you're working on this project with me, here's what has to get done on that, right? And then they connect with the people manager. That's just one of my thoughts, but like, there has to be a better way.
I agree that there has to be a better way. I also agree that I haven't found it. I've been
Yeah.
in situations where we've tried things like to have different tracks. So you have like the individual contributor track
Yep.
and the people manager track. And one of the things that I liked about the way that some of those tracked programs have come out is that you don't get paid more to be a people
Right.
manager, right? That there's 100% of a job that needs to be done and you get paid for 100% of that job.
Uh-huh.
And so if that job requires you to manage people, there's not a premium put
Right.
on you needing to manage people. And I think the thing that was successful about that was kind of solving one problem that you alluded to a little bit, which is people could move up in the organization without feeling like, well, now I need to learn how to manage people in order to get paid more, in order to move up. They could do it with, and by having real conversations about which track they wanted to be on, right? Which is another thing. Like, now as a manager, I can have a really substantive conversation about where you want to be without having to
Pigeonhole.
pigeonhole you into, wanting to be a people manager. That's something that either you don't want to do or you're not good at.
Yeah, and like, but what we need to say is like, that's okay.
It is
It's not for
okay.
everyone.
Not, and I think the thing too is like, traditionally, for years and years and years, we've been promoting people just because they were good at their jobs. We never required people to be good people managers, which is part of the problem, right?
Yes.
And it's like, if you now as an organization can recognize that your business need is to have somebody who can manage people,
Yeah.
maybe make that, make them the department head or make that an
Yep.
independent thing. That shouldn't now be the responsibility of all these really great individual contributors that you have, because now like when you're really thinking about the business need, requiring these 100% individual contributors who are really good at their job to now take on 2 people managers, well, you're cutting 20% of their job off. Right?
Absolutely.
What are
You're
you losing
losing.
there, and where is
Yep.
that going?
Yep.
Where is that work going? Because that person, either you're now requiring that person to do 120% of a job,
Right.
or just 20% of work is not getting done, or it's not getting done well, right? And so
Right.
starting this whole process by thinking about what the need of the business is really important.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's just that to me is such an interesting topic because I feel like it keeps coming up with like friends, old coworkers, everybody that I'm talking to recently. That's just something that is constantly coming up. And so I don't know. You and I are going to solve this
We
problem
are, and
for the world.
we're gonna get like a, I don't know, is there some kind of peace prize for that already? We're gonna create like the people
Yeah, I was
peace
gonna say
prize.
we can create it. Yeah, I'm not beneath we're above creating it. I mean, and giving it to
We're gonna give
us.
it to ourselves first.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
That's awesome. I love that.
Um, Before we wrap up, because I don't want this to be like so long that both of us are like, what did we do? Anything else about employee engagement surveys that you want to just share before?
A few things, I think. So it's like some quick things off the top of my head that I find that are not helpful, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
too long.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many questions. Um, it's obviously not anonymous.
Yes, even though it's told that like if it's not anonymous, say it's not anonymous. If it is, say,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
I find that
Even,
sometimes too frequently also, like in organizations that do them too frequently, that can be an
so
issue too.
yes, you know what? I'm glad that you brought this up, because right, the thing that we've been talking about, the employee engagement survey, should be used as a benchmark.
Yeah,
You can do lots of other surveys if you want, and I encourage other surveys, but it is just, that is the ruler. Here's where
yeah.
we're going to start. We're going to do this again next year to see how we did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you give that benchmark survey, in my opinion, more than once, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, are you that insecure that you constantly need to know, or that out of touch too,
Right.
you know?
Right. It's just, no. The most you need to give that like benchmark milestone survey is once. I think that if you are a huge organization, perhaps twice, like if you have, a good amount of turnover
Right.
in the year, like there are things that I think would make having it more than once make sense, but
Right.
not as a default.
Right.
Right.
Right. I agree with you.
And I think that making allowing your employees to know, like making it very clear that they can ask questions
Yeah.
anytime,
Anytime.
this
Yep.
that this isn't the only time you want to hear from them, is also really important, because I've had leadership people say to me like, well, we gave them an employee engagement survey, and I'm like, when was that? Was that April of last year?
Were they here? Did they even work here at that time?
How much turnover have you had since then? Were they
Yeah.
in the same role? Did we do any kind of restructuring since then? Like, come on.
And also, that shouldn't be the place that people have to go to when they want to raise their hand and say, hey, if like I have an idea, or I'm concerned about this, or I would love if we could do this. Like that's not, you need to create more opportunities for that.
And then the last one I'll say is, I do not mind home built employee engagement surveys. I'm not adverse to that. However,
Uh-huh.
make sure, if you're going to do it that way, again, make sure those questions are relevant to your nuanced community. Please don't go out and Google like employee engagement survey
Right.
and do that to your people. If you're going to build it, then build it for real. Build it relevant to your community.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with you completely. And you know what? If you're going to go out and Google a template, fine. As a place to start, modify it, add
Place
to
to
it.
start in bold,
Place
underline,
to
italicized.
start. Yes. Period. Place to start. And you don't have out of thin air, but make it unique to your business.
Yeah.
And what are you trying to solve for? What questions, do you need to ask to get the answers that you're looking for?
Right.
Maybe not the outcome you're looking for, but the information you're looking for. So
And
that
if
you
the
don't
only
have to
reason
double like you did. Like
Exactly.
that's a
Exactly.
lot. It's a lot of
Exactly.
work for everybody.
And if the only reason you're doing employee engagement surveys is to compare yourself to the organization down the street, don't
Don't
bother.
do it. Yeah, just don't do it. No. Just hire somebody that used to work at the organization down the street and let them tell you what their thoughts are on it. That should suffice. Just poach one of their people.
Right? What did y'all do down here? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we do that better. Awesome. Well, I think this is so useful to, I have a lot of clients that always ask about them, and they ask about them a lot when the conversation of performance reviews comes up because they want to know about their own business performance, basically, and how their, employees are seeing, like, how they're operating as a leader. Like, they want that feedback too. And so, I don't know. I think that there's a time, there's a place for employee engagement surveys. I'm not against them by any means if they're done correctly, as we just
Yeah.
discussed all of those amazing tips and ways to do
I
them
know.
correctly.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for hanging out and talking to me. And
I love talking to you. Are you kidding me? I could talk to you forever. I'm going to just stop recording real quick.